Thank you all for joining us again for SSCC interviews. This time we are joined by Ela Gandhi. Ela Gandhi was born in Durban, South Africa, where she has been committed to bringing change through activism. She joined the National Indian Congress and was active in fighting against apartheid, for which she was banned from participating in political activism. She later joined the Transitional National Committee and served in the South African Parliament from 1994 to 2004. Today, she continues to fight against violence. She founded and oversees the Mahatma Gandhi Development Trust and currently serves as member of the Religious Affairs Committee. She has been awarded for her work, including the Community of Christ International Peace Award in 2002. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just to get us started and so people know a little bit about who you are. You have a long legacy of activism with your family, from your grandfather, father to your mother. Can you tell us a little bit about how did your family's legacy influence your early interest in activism?
So, being born in a family where everybody was involved in one way or another in the struggle for liberation in South Africa, I began to understand what, the struggle was all about from a very early age. And seeing my parents, being active in the struggle, it also encouraged me to participate as well. So at a very early age, I think I was about 12, 13 years old, when we used to go on protest marches, and I used to join the family on those protest marches against many, laws that discriminated against Black people, Black meaning Indian, African, colored, and all the other races besides the white race. So we participated in those demonstrations, and that was the beginning of my activism.
I think when you talk about community, it's really interesting that you've been with this idea or like moving in community as a central part of your life since your childhood, because you were raised in the Phoenix settlement. How much this growing up in this environment shaped who you are today and your interest for community and social work?
I think, the fact that I was born at Phoenix made a very big difference in my life, because at Phoenix we were exposed to all racial groups. South Africa was divided into different areas where people of different races lived. But at Phoenix, it was just open, and we were living amongst African people, amongst all race groups. And with the results that growing up, we didn't look at people as belonging to a particular race group. For us, every human being was a human being. And that's all, we didn't compartmentalize whether the person is rich or poor, whether the person is educated or, not educated, and all those divisions that people create, artificial divisions. Fortunately, I wasn't exposed to that, with the result that I was able to see everyone, in a different light, from perhaps if I was living in a township where they were all of one race group, then I would identify with a particular race group and, you know, yeah, so it gave me a broader perspective on
Yeah,
life. And I think that that made a very big difference in a country like South Africa.
of course.
Um, I think the other issue was, you know, because we lived in the community where we interacted very closely, it was like, you know, one would say something like a monastery. Although we didn't have very strict rules, but, you know, there were some basic conditions on which we lived. And because of that, there was a close interaction with the people around, not just within my family, but we had a broader family which comprised of all the people around
Mm,
us. And so we begin to look at the community as our family. And that makes a difference as well, because then you know, begin to um, learn how each other experiences different problems, um, how they deal with them. You begin to, you know, see that there's a necessity to overcome some of the difficulties, and how does one overcome them. So um, you begin to be involved in the life of the community. And that also makes a big difference, because we often, you know, in a city, we would go on the road and we encounter people who are struggling, who might be, you know, poor, who might be in difficult situations like suffering with disabilities or something, and we ignore them. It doesn't, you don't get involved with them. Whereas if you are living in a community and your natural reaction is to be involved with other people, you would immediately do something to help the person. It's a natural, you know, reaction that here's a person who is suffering and we've got to do something to help the person. And you begin to start helping. And I think that that's the bottom line, you know, where you feel that you've got to do something,
I have
not
a
just for yourself, but for everyone else.
I have a question regarding all of what you just said, Ella. You know, I think our racism, just as in South Africa and in Colombia, it started since colonization. We have this very sad and violent past, and it's a historical past that is very deeply entrenched in our societies. And you know, I feel like for young people, they have a chance through education. We talked about this a lot with Cecilia Alvarez, how important education is, and as you said, how important it is for people to get to know all communities and educate people to love above race. Um, but I feel like this is more difficult to someone who has, you know, who has been taught all their life to hate, or has been taught all their life to think that white race is superior to other races, to brown people, to black people. So for those people who have a very deeply entrenched racism in their heads, how do you break free from hate?
I think what I've learned from my own experience is that talking to people does make a difference, but it doesn't make a fundamental difference. a fundamental difference only comes when you interact with different race groups, when you work together, when you play together, you interact with them. And you begin to see that these are not people, they are like us. They have the same desires as we have. They have the same feelings as we have. And so why should there be these differences? And you begin to reason with yourself. But talking about it alone doesn't really make a difference. So if you're in a classroom where you meet all the students of your race group, and there you learn that it is not a good thing to discriminate against other people. This is what you are being taught in a classroom, but you're not experiencing. You are not experiencing interaction with other race groups. And so unless you actually experience that interaction, that education alone is not going to bring about a change in you. This is what I have experienced and I've found. And I know that because we were brought up at Phoenix Settlement and we were, we didn't have to be taught. It was natural for us to regard everyone as equals. And so, that is the kind of life we were brought up in. But those who were not brought up with that, it becomes a bit of an issue to change that because you've learned something. Now you have to unlearn that and learn something new. And to do that, you have to have some experiences with people.
And what would your advice be when you're dealing with someone who doesn't, I feel like this has to do with the superiority complex. People that do not want to question their judgment, do not want to question how they've been educated, and do not want to participate in this interaction. How can you make them want to?
Well, the most important thing is that we are all God's children. And I think, that belief has to begin to change. So the first change happens in the mind, away from the belief that you are superior, and begin to look at we are all God's children, we are all together in this world, and we have to work with each other. And there is no superior and inferior person. Everybody has something in them which they can, through which they can contribute towards whatever is happening in the world. So we all have different talents, we have inclinations, we have, different learning, but at the end of the day, together, we become much more stronger. And this is something that we have to talk about to people who have those ideas in their mind. Why they would come to listen to you is another issue where you have to motivate people that the direction in which they are going is not a direction to a better world, but it's a direction to actually cause more conflict in the world. It's a direction which is going to harm the world, and therefore they have to change. So the consequences are important. People need to know what the consequences are of having attitudes like that. And consequences will happen. They can happen in any situation. If you have an attitude of that, that you are superior to other people, and you can treat other people in, any way without respect and so on, then one day that is going to come back to bite you. It will happen. And this is what people need to know, that it's, that is going to happen. There will be consequences to having attitudes like that.
You just mentioned religion as well. I wanted to ask you, I think right now we're experiencing big issues and historically regarding religion. In a world that's often divided by religious differences, what approaches do you believe spirituality and religion can help to bridge these divisions? And how can religion enable to unite the fight against injustice?
Yes, so, as I said earlier, we create these differences. It's as human beings, we are doing it to ourselves. We are creating the differences. So in the same way as we create the racial difference, that one race group is superior to the other, in the same way we create religious differences by thinking and by believing that what I believe in is the only correct path. That you can, you have to believe in what I am believing in for you to actually get, to heaven or whatever it is that happens after you die. That is the reality, that people make you believe that there is only one path to heaven, whereas in reality, there are many paths and they lead to the same end. All religions, the basic fundamental belief in compassion, in love, in, believing in God, in being good, whatever the parameters are that you create about what is good and what is bad. But it's the only path that will lead you to the ultimate. And that is not true, because all religions have the same concept. Basic concepts are the same. Basic understanding is the same in all religions. That's why we all pray. Maybe we pray differently, but we all pray. Maybe we look at God as a different entity, but we all believe that there is some power, some superpower that we worship or we believe in. Okay? And when you read the scriptures, because Gandhiji did that, he read all the scriptures of many religions. He read the Bible, he read the Gita, he read the Quran and other scriptures. And what he found there is that there is more similarity than difference in our scriptures. If you really read them and imbibe them, you will realize that, oh, I believe in this, but they also believe in the same thing. They may be doing it differently. The differences are in the rituals, the way we pray, the place we pray in, the words we say may be different, but the meaning is the same. If you sing a hymn, a Christian hymn, and you compare it with the hymn of any other faith, you'll find that the meaning is the same. The wording might be different, the way you say it is different, the way you sing it is different, the words, the language is different, but the meaning is the same. So one needs to begin to understand that. And that understanding comes from exposing yourself to other religions. Why do we have to feel, vulnerable about, say, going to the church or going to the mosque or going to a temple? It doesn't mean that you go to these places and you're going to change or something is going to happen to you. If you believe in your own religion and you understand your religion, you can easily also begin to understand other religions without having to convert into other religions. You have a good understanding of other faiths and a respect for other faiths. If you respect them and you understand them, there'll be no conflict.
Maybe regarding dialogue, and I know you work in the Transitional Executive Committee post-apartheid, and I think Colombia is also going through a period of transition. What are some main lenses you took while you were working through in the Transitional Executive Committee that maybe we can learn from you, Colombia can learn from South Africa and from you personally?
So, when we were part of the liberation struggle, and even now, the one thing that our leadership in South Africa, all our leaders, emphasized was this diversity. That we are diverse, we have different race groups, we have different religions, we have different languages, but we need to respect them and need to understand each other. So in doing that, if you look at, for instance, when we have our president, or when we have the inauguration of our parliament, we have all religions represented, the leaders of all the faiths in South Africa. And they say prayers. You will see that at the inauguration. Mr. Mandela started that in the first, because it's part of our constitution. We have a commission which looks at, cultures, that we have these different cultures, and all cultures must be treated equally. It doesn't matter if there are 10 people who regard this as their culture, and there are millions of people who believe in another culture. But we respect the culture of these 10 people. That is the thing. It doesn't mean that the majority culture is the only culture that we regard as being the real culture of the country. It's not like that. For instance, in South Africa, there are minorities, very small minorities of Zoroastrian, for instance, or Sikh people. I don't know if you know the Sikh religion. Yeah. So there are very few people, but they have just as strong a right as those who believe in Christianity. Even though we have like majority of South Africans, almost 80% of South Africa is Christian. But Christian faith is not the dominant faith in South Africa. We accept all the faiths. and everyone has an equal right to their faith, to worship as they believe in, to talk the language that they talk in, their cultural items like dance and poetry and literature and so on. We respect all those different aspects. So that is very important in building a nation. And if it comes right from the highest point, then you see that it permeates through the community. Everyone begins to accept that, yes, we have diversity and we must learn about the diversity and we must respect diversity.
Particularly in the West, traditional religious adherence is declining, and secularization is on the rise. So do you believe that rather than religion dying, it's evolving?
I think there is a dual path. There are lots of people who believe in secular, and when I say secular, it means no religion. But there are also a lot of people in the world who think that faith is important, faith in God is important. That, you can't just discard religion completely. And so they, do adhere to some form or another of faith. Even if they discard the traditional beliefs, they believe in Christianity. And as you say, in some instances, that belief in Christianity has been evolved to accept some Christian understanding together with traditional understanding as well.
Yes, because what we've seen, especially in the West, is that, and in young people, I am also part of that, we take, it can be Christian, Muslim, the traditional idea of religion, and then we are deciding what we believe and what we question about that religion. So it's not that we're like young people are following, obviously a part of young people are following like Christianity as you're supposed to do it, as the Bible says, as the church says, but you're deciding on what you believe, how you perceive God, how you perceive the rules. And so I feel like that's how religion is evolving now.
And that is a good, path, because nothing is static. We have to change with times. And, if you, I'm not sure if you are Catholic, but if you listen to Pope Francis, he is saying there are a lot of ways in which he has changed the church, the thinking of the church. And so, yes, the religions are evolving. And, we have to, nothing must be accepted without critical thinking. Critical thinking is important. You become extremist and fundamentalist if you stop thinking and you accept that this is the only way. And, you've got to follow the word to the letter. If that is how you think, then you have stopped your own mind from looking at issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was brought up at Phoenix Settlement and I was taught to think for myself. I know that, we had a lot of beliefs. Gandhi, had a philosophy and so on. We were taught that, but we were taught to think for ourselves. Accept what you think is correct. Don't just accept it because somebody said that it's right, and therefore you have to accept it. You've got to think for yourself. And that makes you more, sincere about what you are doing. Then when you do things because somebody else has told you to do this.
Yes, I had a question. We all know the importance that your family had in activism during many years. So I would like to ask you, you carrying on that legacy about non-violence, about peaceful protest, and everything related to this philosophy. What do you think are the importance of this philosophy or this way of just living or answering or responding to problems like actual today, and how carrying on the legacy is important to the future and the future generations?
Well, I think that there are two very fundamental things in the philosophy that we believe in, that I, have been taught. The one is that, that materialism is not everything in life. That trying to, look at yourself and how you can enrich yourself or how you can better your own life. And that is not, the path that is going to lead you eventually to a better life. That one needs to, we live in society, we are interdependent, and we need to, this is what I was talking about at the beginning when I spoke about communal living and community, thinking about the community, moving away from yourself to looking at what affects other people. So that is the one very fundamental thing. And that means moving away from materialism to a path of, it could be self-sacrifice, it could be looking at how you can help other people, all those things. Empathy, compassion, love, those are some of the basic principles that arise from that kind of thinking. Okay? Now, that is the one thing. The second point is that we have seen in terms of history that when you practice violence, violence, perpetuates violence. So you hit somebody, that person will respond by hitting you, and it will carry on until you have either defeated the person so badly that he can't get up or she can't get up, or you've killed the person. Either way, you have humiliated the person. If you've killed the person, that person doesn't live alone. He's got a family. She's got a family. All those people who were part of that person's life are now against you. You have started a cycle of hatred, and that cycle arises from assaulting a person, becoming violent. And the same thing happens at individual level. it happens at communal level, and it happens at country level. When your country attacks another country, the other country and all the people in that country and all the friends of that country will begin to hate your country. And there will be that hatred that continues, and they will try to defeat you. If they don't defeat you immediately, one day they will come back and try to defeat you, because historically it will be put into your mind that this is what happened. And that's what happens with violence. That hatred continues. Whereas if you practice non-violence, you end that hatred. You end the cycle of hatred, and you bring in, because non-violence is practiced by love. You understand the other person, you begin to reason with that other person, you begin to try to bring about a change through persuasion. And persuasion requires love. So love enters that, and then there is no space for hatred. The person willingly changes. And sometimes you have to exert some pressure for the person to be motivated to come to the table to discuss things with you. So just as we said at the beginning, there is motivation. You motivate by telling the person that there will be consequences to what you're doing. And if you don't change, you will be suffering those consequences. So you can use the same kind of motivation to bring the person to the table and begin to have these discussions, negotiations, peaceful means of change, rather than violent means of change. And that is the important thing, because by bringing in peaceful change, you make friends, you don't make enemies.
I think it's really interesting, all the experience you have in activism and fighting for these type of causes. You were during a period during house arrest, and your voice was attempted to be silenced. How did you cope with that suppression, and how can people that are trying to make a change and fight for something but are being currently suppressed, what can they do, or like what methodologies or coping systems did you had in that moment?
Okay, so yes, it is a difficult situation when you are repressed in that way. People have been put into prison, people have been tortured, killed. All those things have happened in our country. And yet, if you believe that you want to bring about change and you believe in the cause, your cause is an important cause, the cause of freedom, the cause of bringing a better life for the majority or for all the people in the country. And that is an important cause. And if you believe in that cause, you would be prepared to lay your life for that cause. So when we enter into the struggle, we know that these are the possible consequences. Anything can happen. You can be tortured, you can be killed. That is the ultimate price that you have to pay. And then there are all these other things like house arrest and banning and so on, suppression of your voice and that. So you know that that can happen, and therefore you get prepared for it. You are prepared to give your life if it comes to that. That is a very important thing. And therefore, when Gandhiji was mobilizing people And when he asked people to join the struggle, he informed them of all these possibilities. And he said that this is, remember that this can happen. And remember, this is your cause. And if you want to join, you join willingly, knowing that this is what's going to happen. Just as you join the army, when you join an army, you know that when you go to war, what can happen. But you go to war nevertheless because you want to protect your country, or you are, determined to go into the army. So in the same way, in nonviolent struggle, you go into the nonviolent struggle knowing what are the consequences, what you can face, and your determination to bring about change is what motivates you. So that is something that you have to cultivate in the people. The second thing is, so what are the methods? How do you overcome this suppression and so on? Now, we knew that when our voice is silenced, there are many other voices that can rise up, right? And if we need to help people in order to understand, issues, we would help them through many ways of communication besides actually communicating, individually. There were underground leaflets. There were leaflets that were thrown on the street and people picked them up and learned from them. There were many ways in which information and education material was made available to people. So those were ways in which people, managed the situation. For ourselves, we can begin to educate ourselves. You have all the time. You are house arrested. You can read. You can educate yourself. I got my degree whilst I was under house arrest. So those are some of the things that you can do. Occupy yourself with different kinds of occupation. There's also, the whole question of how do you still remain relevant, even though your voice has been silenced. You can still remain relevant because you can do a lot of things which you find, I was a social worker. I could listen to problems that other people had and mobilize them into understanding how they can actually deal with their problem, strengthen them, provide them with knowledge, provide them with equipment to be able to deal with their problems. I'll cite you some examples. There were some people who were going to be evicted from their homes because they wanted to declare that particular area for some other purpose. So they were going to be evicted and they wanted to protest, but they didn't know how to. There was a court case that was coming up and we informed them about where the court case will be held because they were not able to get information readily. We would provide them with the information. Then we would provide them with material like paper, pens and things to write slogans and stand and demonstrate. We will not move from our home or, you will not evict us. You will not succeed in evicting us. Slogans like that. And, they would then put it up and stand with those slogans, with those posters. So those were some of the things that creatively we could do to help the community without going out, without going and having a public meeting, not addressing anybody. You're doing this in your office or quietly, and you're not exposing yourself.
Fighting injustice and inequality, as you said, is very important for society and, as you said, for the community. And following the idea of suppression that we were just talking about, I wanted to mention women. Women have been systematically suppressed and undermined for centuries, and even to this day. And I wanted to ask you, what challenges have you faced as a woman in the realm of politics and activism, and how have you navigated these obstacles?
Well, women were marginalized all the time. I mean, if you look at our political organizations, at the beginning, no women were part of the political organizing. They were not members, they were not allowed to be members of the organization. It was through women's own demonstration and willingness to actually show that they had the strength, the courage, and the wisdom to be able to do things. Women marched in 1913 when the rest of the world's women didn't have a vote. In South Africa, Kasturba, Gandhiji's wife, marched in protest, and she courted imprisonment. Today, very few people know about Kasturba. They don't even know, if I tell you Kasturba, you may not know that she was the wife of Mahatma Gandhi, because there are so few books written about her. But in 1913, she was prepared with other women. They mobilized themselves and they defied the law and went to prison and suffered in prison, but they came out brave and ready to be part of the struggle. So that was one example. In South Africa before, in 1913 also, before Kasturba marched, there were African women who were, the pass laws were being extended to African women. And they felt that these pass laws are causing a lot of trouble for their men. And so they have to march against it, because they also didn't want the pass laws to be extended to them. And they marched to the police station, peaceful march to the police station, and they said, here's all your passes, and we don't want them. We're not going to carry them, and if you want to arrest us, you can arrest us. They were not arrested because they were also many, and but they marched against the pass laws. In 1956, there was a huge march of women in South Africa against the pass laws again. And that march has been recorded, and they were so brave. And there was a state of emergency declared when this took place. They overcame that. They came in, they couldn't come in a whole group together into Pretoria in front of the Union building. So they came in groups of 3s and 4s from different sides and stood there in front of the Union building. So there wasn't, they couldn't say that you came here as a mob. They came separately and they stood there. Eventually, there were over 20,000 women gathered in front of the Union building. And they went and gave the petitions to the minister. They had asked for the prime minister, but he didn't pitch up. He sent somebody else to collect them and they gave it to him. And they walked away silently, not saying anything. And it was such a great show that from that day on, the ANC declared 9th of August, because that happened on the 9th of August. So 9th of August was declared as National Women's Day by the ANC initially for many years, and in 1994, after the democratic government was brought into South Africa, 9th of August is recognized as Women's Day. So this was a woman's struggle. We have to mobilize, we have to work, and this is what we said all along through the struggle, that even if they don't recognize us, we must just carry on and work. We must mobilize. And we mobilized women, and they participated in all sections of the struggle. And because of that, we have many laws in our country now that protect women and that protect the status of women in this country. We haven't yet reached the ideal position, because to reach the ideal position, you have to change society. And we are still busy with that aspect, to change societal thinking and to look at equal status of women.
I feel like feminism has achieved so many things, but there are so many people that criticize mainstream feminism because it has advocated for rights that are relevant to middle and upper class women rather than working class and Black or brown women. In what ways do you feel that this mainstream feminism has failed to address specific issues faced by economically disadvantaged women and Black and brown women?
So right from the beginning, when we, entered the struggle, particularly women's struggle in South Africa, we said that we suffer triple oppression. We suffer because we are women, we suffer because we are poor, and we suffer because we are not white. So Black and brown women suffer inequality because of the race. We suffer inequality because of class, because of being poor, and we suffer inequality because of gender. So gender, class, and race are woven together in oppressing women. And therefore, when we struggle, we have to look at all those three levels of struggle and overcome them. We cannot get gender equality if we don't have class equality and we don't have race equality. You've got to have race, class, and gender all together. And that is very, very important, because otherwise we are instruments of oppressing other women. And that shouldn't happen. So therefore, we have to look at those triple oppression of women and begin to look at how we can change society, changing society is to educate them about this triple oppression. Everyone. Women have to know about the triple oppression. Men have to know about the triple oppression. And we have to bring about that change in order to bring about a more equitable society.
After all these conflicts and problems of our society, as part of SSCC, what do you think is the importance of cooperation among the South?
Yeah, I think it's very important because what we see is that there is a very big division between the South and the North. And when you look at, the other day we were talking about education. If you look at education, we always, our textbooks and our reference books are written by Western or people from the North, right? And the South has been left out because we are poor, because what we write, people don't, they don't give it importance. And the only way that we can give it importance is by getting together, have a cooperation between all the countries of the South, and begin to market our thoughts, our ideas, and our influence, so that people begin to learn that here's a thought, a philosophy that is of equal importance as the philosophy that comes from the West or comes from the North. And only then can we really bring about change, when we can, actually show that this is an important thought that comes from the South.
So now for closing this very interesting dialogue that we had, I would like to ask you, well, talking about the future, what advice would you give to young activists who are just starting out, and how the impact of young people and activism can change the world for good?
Well, I think we must break out from just looking at yourself, going out into the community, looking at community issues. Young students, young activists can begin to see, how can we come together and make a difference? How can we bring about changes? What changes is it that we are looking for? That is very important, because sometimes, young people go in a completely wrong direction, in the sense that maybe you want to bring about changes so that you can have free access to alcohol or drugs or something like that, and get people mobilized to get free access to alcohol and drugs. Now, do you think that that is going to bring about a good change in your country? Is it going to be good for people to have access to these kinds of things? What do these things do to a person? You need to learn about that, to educate yourself, to see what are the issues, real issues, that need to be changed in order to bring about a better society. And when you come, to grips with these are the changes, then you can mobilize the community, the young people, to look at that. For instance, weather, the environment. It's a huge issue, because At the end of the day, the old people are going to die and go. It's you who are going to live in this world, which is either going to be very hot, or the oceans are going to go over the islands and people will die, or there's going to be some sort of, we don't know what can happen if we don't do something about the environment. And young people can begin to do things. In your own neighborhood, you can begin to look at how to conserve water, how to conserve energy, how to not use plastic, how to recycle. What are the issues that cause these emissions? Maybe industries, big industries that are causing it. Young people can go and demonstrate and say, look, we don't want these industries. We don't, you've got to, if you open up an industry here, you've got to guarantee that you are not going to affect the environment. So there are many things that, educate yourself about it and then mobilize the community to do something about it.
Thank you.
Greta Thunberg, you must have heard of her. It took her to show us the way in terms of the environment. So there are many young people who have gone out there and shown courage and done something about things.
Thank you so much for that. I think this is a great last question. I think we each have personal passions and problems we all like to address. So this is a great way to end. We want to thank you so much for your time. I think we could all stay here talking to you forever. But for the moment, I think this is a great conversation to have that has given a lot of thought to each of us. So thank you so much. And thank you for all your work that you have done. I think it's very necessary and we all need a little bit more dialogue and comprehension. So again, thank you so much for your time and we hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.